Another LSU assistant says no thanks to the NFL. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt McMahon. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Had a chance to visit with LSU Athletic Director Verge Ausberry about a lot of topics. Jersey patch, Matt McMahon's future, Lane Kiffin. You're going to hear that in just a bit. But I'd be remiss if we started anywhere other than Jake Olsen staying at LSU. Now, on Friday, there were multiple reports. Pete Nakos, Matt Zenitz were reporting that the Commanders had identified Jake Olsen as a target to be their new safeties coach. Now, we talked about it here on the show, and it's one of the reasons you should be listening to Locked on LSU, because I pointed out that the verbiage in those tweets suggested a deal was not done, that they were targeting Jake Olsen. And then actually on Saturday, maybe had a little birdie tell me that they were still negotiating and it was not done. And ultimately, Jake Olsen made the decision to stay at LSU. Now, in the interview I mentioned with Verge Ausberry, which we'll come back to in a minute, but I did ask Verge point blank if Jake Olsen had an offer from the Washington Commanders, or if this was just reported interest, or did they actually offer him the job? Here's what Verge said.
Yes, he was offered the position, and we had to do some things to make sure that we retain him. And he was important to Blake and on the defense side of the ball, and we was able to keep him. And one thing, talking to Jake said, Verge, I want to be here and I want to win national championships, and this is the place.
So there you have it. Like, this was a situation where Olsen was offered the job. Sometimes there can be interest. We talked a lot about Charlie Weiss and potential interest from the Giants or the Bills or other spots. The Eagles were one that were rumored. And I don't know if there was ever a formal offer. Verge Ausberry is telling you the Commanders offered Jake Olsen the job, and LSU, you heard Verge say we had to do some things. Maybe it's salary. We'll see what all that means. But the bottom line is, there's two assistants now that had interest from the NFL in this offseason that decided to stay at LSU, which speaks to the power of LSU, but also LSU's commitment to giving Lane Kiffin whatever he needs. And Lane Kiffin wanted to keep Blake Baker. They did. Paying Blake Baker $3 million a year. Baker wanted to keep Olsen. They did. Remember, if you're an everydayer, you heard the episode prior, but we connected these dots. So Durante Jones, who was the LSU defensive coordinator in 2021, is now the defensive coordinator at the Washington Commanders. When Durante was at LSU in 2021, Blake Baker was the linebackers coach. The defensive analyst working with linebackers was Jake Olsen. So clearly, Olsen made an impression on Durante Jones and Blake Baker. And the thing that I'll continue to say over and over again to underscore the importance is Blake Baker was not retained by Brian Kelly, got the DC job at Missouri. Well, he hired Jake Olsen as his linebackers coach. And then when he got the job back at LSU, he brought Olsen here to Baton Rouge to be the safeties coach. So Olsen was in Baton Rouge under Baker in 2021, was with Baker for 2 seasons in 22 and 23 at Missouri, and now is in Baton Rouge in 24 and 25 under Baker, and they retained him again for 2026. Point being, if Blake Baker is co-signing on Jake Olsen, whether you know anything about Jake Olsen or not, Blake Baker is co-signing on him. So if you think the world of Blake Baker defensively as a coordinator like I do, that's awesome. Now, we can also talk about the improvement in safety play from 24 to 25. 24, I think, was arguably the worst safety play that I've seen in my life at LSU. Jake Olsen was the safeties coach, but your safeties were Sage Ryan and Jordan Gilbert, who was playing with one arm. Remember, he had dislocated his shoulder, played the whole season basically with one arm, and then had surgery in the offseason. And then Major Burns was your star. That was certainly out of position for Major Burns. But in 2025, you bring in A.J. Halsey, you bring in Tamarcus Cooley, Deshaun Spears is a year older, and all of a sudden your safety play was awesome. Well, good players make coaches look better, no doubt. But I don't know that I blame Jake Olsen wholly for 2024. I don't think he gets all the credit for 2025. But if Blake Baker approves, I think everyone should be on board, and clearly LSU was to get this done. Now, Tuesday is also the day that we talked to Shea Dixon from On 3, the Bengal Tiger. And so Shea is a recruiting expert and analyst. And so retaining Jake Olsen, I think, is certainly significant on field. But what about from a recruiting aspect? I asked Shea what Olsen's reputation is as a recruiter.
He's got a good one. I know, look, everyone talks about Corey Raymond, but Olsen, look, Deshaun Spears is someone who he had gotten close to. I mean, just because he was a local guy, that relationship, I think, is one that has been strong. Helped keep Deshaun Spears here is one of the elements. I mean, he could have entered the portal if he thought, hey, they're looking at other safeties and returning Cooley. And then just building out on this 2027 class, even here in Louisiana. I mean, there's some DBs you can look at. Aiden Anning's little brother, Jaden Anning, is the safety that he's got a good relationship. And then nationally, he's already started. I mean, they were on the road right when the portal ended for 2 weeks in January, and he was doing national recruiting, which is just weird to even think about. But with the portal these days, again, you miss on Delane's younger brother a year ago, and then 10 months pass, and then he's on your roster, not even a full year. So those relationships that he had built through recruiting were big. So like I said, I think having him in that room in addition to Corey Raymond, it's a lot for one person to do from the start, with safeties and corners, and you toss in nickel or other positions like star that they use, I think, a lot more at safety this year than they did a year ago with Harold Perkins. And I think it's a really good thing. I don't think they wanted to be in a spot where they had to go searching for someone just because he checks all those boxes, from relationships to, like I said, knowing the staff, knowing the current players.
So, big win on a lot of fronts, keeping Jake Olsen. And it's important to note as well, when you look at the safety room, while you're losing while you're losing A.J. Halsey, you're retaining Tamarcus Cooley and Deshaun Spears, who's, as we understand, is going to end up playing the star position in 2026, while Baker primarily coaches the stars and Chris Kiffin goes and coaches linebackers. But you're also adding Ty Benefield. So Ty Benefield was, depending on what service you look at, the top safety in the portal. So you replace Halsey with Ty Benefield. You bring back Tamarcus Cooley for a second year in this defense, and Deshaun Spears for another year, his junior season, third under Jake Olsen. The continuity matters so much. And then you heard Shea mention it there. You had Fahim Delane, Mansour's younger brother, who spent his freshman season at Ohio State, now transferring to LSU. I think it worked out pretty well for his brother, his one season in Baton Rouge. So we'll see how it goes for Fahim Delane as well. But continuity in the secondary with Corey Raymond back coaching corners, and Jake Olsen will return coaching the safeties in 2026. I mentioned we had this visit with Verge Ausberry. We covered a lot of ground with Verge that you need to hear, including his thoughts on the jersey patch sponsorship, LSU's opportunity to be good in every sport when it costs so much financially, the LSU brand, and yes, of course, his thoughts on Matt McMahon's future. We'll get to all that as we continue Locked on LSU. It's your team every day. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board, thinking about which team could make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And look, I love futures, especially this time of year. Whether you're picking a team to win the championship, to grab a conference title, it adds the extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick your cash, but it could also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is sitting open? Well, when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute we've been talking, companies like yours have hired 27 people on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching, more time interviewing those candidates with less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of Locked on LSU will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked on LSU. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Want to get to our conversation with Verge Ausberry, but of course, always love telling you about our friends and the Everydayer Club here at the Locked on LSU podcast. So get Locked on LSU ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access. You can join at the link in the description down in the show notes. So Verge Ausberry visited with me on my radio show on Tuesday, and we covered a lot of ground. Of course, this was one day after the landmark announcement for LSU of their jersey patch sponsor, a first of its kind for a major college sports athletic department with LSU and Woodside Energy. By the way, if you missed the previous episode where we went into great detail about the jersey patch, you heard a lot of our excerpts from our interview with Sarah Bairstow, who's the president of Louisiana LNG for Woodside Energy. You will love it. I cannot recommend strongly enough you go listen or watch that episode where we talked about Sarah Bairstow. If you're at all interested in this jersey patch sponsorship and what it means for LSU, you will not get that info quite literally anywhere else. This is like the person in charge of Woodside Energy for Louisiana explaining why they did this deal. You will enjoy this. But I did ask Verge Ausberry about that, about the reasoning for the jersey patch, and certainly answered the objection that LSU fans have of wearing a jersey patch when so many people are opposed to it.
Matt, in this time, this is how strong also. I just wanted to say how strong the LSU brand is nationally and internationally, where we stand today. Today's world, like I always say, the new AD is totally different from 3 or 5 years ago. It's all about revenue generating right now. And all of us around the country, all the ADs around the country and administrators around the country, we're looking for new ways to generate revenue. We were advanced on the way, when they did the Nike contract. We were advanced in this year. We've been working with Woodside Energy, a great company for LNG company in our state, who also have about $17.5 billion investments in Louisiana. We've been working with them for a period of time on getting this done. So we didn't wait till they say you could do it. We were very aggressive in it. Clay Harris led the charge in this area. And we was talking about it for a year about what we need to do and how we need to do to get the jersey patches on our jerseys. And we just thought it was a great idea and a great deal. And also, naming the football field, putting the name on the football field. Those are the things that now as the new AD, you got to think outside the box. You can't wait for them to give you permission. You have to say, okay, what's the next? Where in athletics do we generate new revenue? With this, the NIL, the rev sharing, buyouts, and things of that nature. You just have to be advanced in it.
Verge, what do you say to the fans who maybe push back against the idea of what's quote unquote sacred and putting a logo on a jersey or on the field?
We're gonna do it in great taste, and we're not just put those signals and those images all over the place. But I tell them this is a new day, new age. Back then, like I said, 5 years ago, you wasn't paying football players, you wasn't paying basketball players, any women basketball players, any other athlete. It's just a new era where we at today. Do I like it? I'm a traditionalist guy. Yeah, I played when we didn't have anything on uniforms. I agree, but if we're going to keep up and we're going to compete with the top teams in the United States, we have to do the things that are taking place now.
That is the most important part of what Verge said. And that's the part that can't be lost. Because at this point, it costs money, more money than ever, to win. It used to be that you could pay good coaches and you'd build nice facilities and you could recruit to that. Well, now you literally have to write a $20 million line item in your budget to pay your players as part of revenue share. Well, you can't just cut $20 million in expenses to afford that. You have to find new revenue streams. And that's what LSU is doing as successfully or more successfully than quite literally anyone. Now, but the other question I asked Verge is if it's even possible for every sport to be good, because right now 18 sports at LSU are ranked. 18 of the 21 are ranked. And the point is, when you have $20 million in rev share to divvy up among all those sports, and football is getting 75%, and men's basketball is getting 15%, and women's basketball is getting 5%, then every other sport is divvying up that remaining 5%. Is it even possible to make the financial commitment to be good in every sport?
You know, Matt, that's a good question. And right now, you're correct. We have 18 sports ranked in the top 25 in our athletic department. And that's a question that we talk about among ourselves. And you know, we're going to try to win in every sport, but I admit to you that it's going to be very expensive to do that, and the days are changing. So we got to do a sit down as a staff and analyze, you know, what's important to us, where we could win at, places that we don't think we can win or can't be successful, and, you know, you might make changes there. But overall, we're going to try to do what we can do in this new age, this new climate. And we don't know, to be honest with you, Matt. Nobody knows where this thing is going and where it's going to end at. And that's the scary part. There's so much uncertainty in our business right now, and we're just trying to figure it out. You know, what could we do to be better? You know, we can't just keep raising ticket prices on our fans. We can't just keep going up on apparel contracts. But, you know, we have a small window to generate revenue. Tiger Athletic Foundation, Matt Borman and that group has done a great job of trying to help us close the gap. But out there, raising money with people with the NIL, those are the type of things that we're going to have to do in the future to be successful.
You heard Verge say we can't just keep raising ticket prices on our fans. I guess you could, but at what cost? If you lose, your fans turn their back on you. So your options are keep raising ticket prices on your fans or find new revenue streams. And clearly what LSU has done better than anyone, from the Nike deal we announced a few weeks ago or a few months ago to the Woodside Energy deal to Venture Global's logo on the field, is identify. Look, Clay Harris is identify those revenue streams. Clay Harris is LSU's chief revenue officer. His job is to go find new revenue streams for LSU. And he's done a brilliant job of that, which is why LSU, despite hiring Lane Kiffin, is not increasing ticket prices. Oh, by the way, Verge Ausberry told us that LSU has 44,000 people on a waiting list for football season tickets. That is the Lane Kiffin effect. By the way, I asked him for some context there. Again, there's roughly 71,000 tickets in Tiger Stadium allocated for season ticket holders. So there's a wait list of 44,000. And I asked him for context.
I think the most we've ever had like that request is maybe 17,000. My ticket guys told me this is number, and it's still early in the process, Matt. And it's Lane Kiffin, it's the team he recruited, the players he recruited, and also a great home schedule we have.
Yeah.
We have a great football schedule this year, and there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of buzz. We haven't had this much buzz around this team until the 2019 national championship team. And I'm not saying we're going to play in the national championship and win the game, but there's a lot of buzz and there's a lot of excitement about LSU right now. And not only with our fan base, but throughout the country. There's a lot of activity and a lot of corporate sponsors and a lot of donors. That's, people, like I said, I don't want to say it's worth betting on LSU right now.
I mean, that's a mouthful. When you hear 71,000 season tickets and a wait list of 44,000, when the most in program history is 17,000. That is the Lane Kiffin effect. Now they're going to have to go win. Well, the one program that LSU is counting on to win and investing in to win that isn't is men's basketball. And I did ask Verge about Matt McMahon's future. You'll hear that as we continue and wrap here on Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
So the LSU men's basketball program is going to miss the NCAA tournament for a 4th consecutive season. And as we've talked about, what Matt McMahon inherited was a bad situation. That is objectively true. Will Wade had been fired. LSU was facing the possibility of sanctions, which did come, a postseason ban, scholarship restrictions. And so in order to attract a quality coach, you had to give that quality coach time. So LSU offered Matt McMahon a 7-year contract, and they got him away from Murray State, where he was a conference champion and in the NCAA tournament the year prior to taking the LSU job. And while sanctions came, an NIT bid came in year 2 under Matt McMahon. And the expectation was that in year 3, you take that next step. However, the Tigers regressed to one of the worst seasons we've seen in half a century. And then coming into this year, the Tigers and their supporters made the decision, instead of trying to hire a new coach, invest in the roster. And LSU's boosters collectively, and the collective a season ago, put roughly $9 million into this roster, which is a massive financial commitment. I'm not saying it's the most in the country, but it's plenty enough to be competitive. It should certainly put you in the NCAA tournament. Instead, LSU has backslid even further. And yes, Jalen Reed's injury and DJ Thomas's injury can't be undersold. Thomas was the crown jewel of your transfer portal class, and he's played in just 3 league games, and he's going to miss the remainder of the season. And Jalen Reed is a legit SEC big that you haven't had this year, and it's so unfortunate what's happened to him with his injuries. But still, for LSU to be where they are, bringing up the rear of the Southeastern Conference with the financial investment they made, is just unacceptable. And I think most LSU fans are under the assumption that Matt McMahon will be fired at the end of the season. And that may very well happen. I want to be clear. I'm not being dismissive and saying that won't happen. But my understanding at this point, as we've expressed, I've told you, if you're an everydayer, you've heard us say it, is that the decision hasn't been made, because there's going to be a large financial commitment that will be required. $10 million to buy out Matt McMahon. Certainly you'll have to pay $3.5 million per year for a new coach plus staff, and then pay the roster as well. And after the heavy lift for football, there may not be as much commitment to do that for basketball unless the right coach is waiting. Maybe we'll wait. But I asked Verge point blank about Matt McMahon and if a decision's been made about his future and how they handle it.
We're going to assess at the end of the year. Dr. Roos, the chairman of the board, all of us will get together, and we're going to look at it as a whole and just try to figure out where we are in basketball. And there's a lot of things that have to be, financially responsible to the institution. LSU also will be making these decisions. It's not going to be, moving coaches around or firing coaches to fire coaches. It'll be something that we're going to think about it in an intelligent way and trying to make sure, is this the right thing to do at this time? But we're going to assess it, and we're going to assess it from the top to the bottom of that basketball program. But you're right. I feel that LSU basketball should be a winner here. It's our second money raiser here at LSU, and LSU basketball should be in the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's just where I feel personally about what we do here in basketball. Over our history and the time we've been here and the great players. I just heard, you had Shaq on one of your commercials just a while ago. We need to be competitive in that sport.
So it is fair to say that you've not yet made a decision about Matt McMahon's future?
Not at all. Not at all. And I visit with Matt once a week, and we talk a lot. And he's my coach, and he's our coach, and we're gonna sit there and we're gonna discuss it together. And look, Matt understands this business. He's been in this business a long time. If you coach at LSU, you're not a beginning coach. You understand how this business works, and you understand that winning is important to us as an institution, especially in that sport.
Verge Ausberry said they were going to do what's financially responsible. Notice in that minute and 26-second interaction, he didn't talk about Matt McMahon as a basketball coach, his X and O's, his recruiting, anything. He talked about doing what was financially responsible. All of this dovetails together. All of this dovetails together. It costs money to win. And should you spend the money to fire Matt McMahon and his staff, hire a new coach, and then pay a roster, or should those monies be allocated elsewhere? This is a financial decision that will be made about Matt McMahon, not a competitive one, unless if Will Wade is available. And that will be fascinating to watch unfold as the remainder of this season does. Okay, that's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Do me a favor. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And as I do ask you, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you. But if you would also please subscribe to the audio podcast on your favorite podcast app. That's a huge way that you could help us grow. So thank you sincerely for that. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.